Professor of International and Diplomacy Studies at Unisa's Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, Professor Anthoni van Nieuwkerk, who joins us live now. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time. Many, experts who are watching developments since the weekend calling this unprecedented and saying that this is definitely going to be a situation that both countries are going to be dealing with for quite some time.
Yes, indeed. Good evening, Bongiwe. I must tell you that I must start by saying that this is breaking news in the real sense of the word. We are actually watching our screens as we speak because there are now reports of another barrage of incoming rockets attacking Israel. And initially, some of us thought that this is really a war between Hamas, which is a terror organization sitting amongst the Palestinians, and a very right-wing government in Israel taking revenge on the Palestinians. But what I'm understanding to be happening now is an escalation and a broadening of the war. And this is probably one of the worst case scenarios that we can imagine, which is that the neighbors are getting sucked into the conflict, and that those who support Israel are sending weapons, including the Americans in particular, but also others, and that the neighbors who are supportive of the Palestinian cause might also want to participate in this expansion and this war that is spreading very fast. It is not the worst case scenario. A real war between countries in the region is what we don't want. So I don't know if the United Nations Secretary General has already spoken, but it's clear to me that there's an effort now to begin to create a humanitarian corridor to help Palestinians escape the extreme violence that they're subjected to.
And Prof, you talk about the UN Secretary General. I was actually going to beg your indulgence and say that we are watching that possible briefing that may come any moment now. And I may have to interject and ask you to pause for a second and then go there and possibly still talk to you about your reaction to that as soon as it wraps up. But Prof, one of the things that we've also seen is around this credible peace process, as some are describing, that is needed by the region right now, needed to be able to settle this particular conflict once and for all. And looking at what Durko has said, talking about how this is going to be one of those processes that becomes crucial in terms of settling, this particular issue. But I wonder then, does South Africa have a role to play when it comes to this particular peace process?
Well, the first thing that we might expect to happen is, if it's possible, the gift of the givers will move in with humanitarian assistance. They seem to be on the button always when there's a crisis, even outside of Africa. And so we must pay credit to the kind of role that inspiring role that they play. But let me hasten to say that as we watch the screens, we are entering a full-blown conflict, a war, between very powerful actors, very powerful, using new technologies, drones, missiles, and so on and so forth. This is not the time for a peace process to start. The conflict is not ripe for resolution. The different parties are hell-bent on destroying the other. And so this is not the moment. And I think we've learned this lesson as South Africans when President Ramaphosa, together with 6 or 7 other heads of state, went to Ukraine and to Russia in an attempt to talk sense to the warring parties. As we know, Ukraine and Russia are still involved in a conflict, and it doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. So there's a tricky situation here. When the parties to the conflict are exhausted and they run out of ammunition or out of morale, and they can't face the violence anymore, then you can begin to explore the possibility of peace. And South Africa has had in the past the opportunity to talk to Palestinians and Israelis about the possibility of beginning to see each other not as enemies but as partners in a peace process. That might happen again, but not anytime soon, I'm afraid, because what we see now is the opening chapter of a much worse conflict that we could have imagined 1 week ago.
And I mean, one looks at the fact that, the fact that things in Israel were in turmoil even before we saw this particular escalation. A lot of people have been talking about the IDF and how also its own disintegration may have found the country wanting. Intelligence could have even been, gathered to see if an attack of this scale would be launched at some point. But it does look like they were caught on the back foot. And a number of people are saying that given what has been happening politically in Israel, they may be forced to go to the peace table a lot more easier because they may be in a weaker position. Would you agree with those who say that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think not, because when you enter into a peace process and you want to negotiate, you need to have credible partners on both sides or all sides, sort of individuals or groups of people who stand, who has a constituency with whom you can negotiate and maybe try and get compromises going. Those people that you negotiate with must be able to go back to their constituencies to say, this is on the table, shall we accept this, what do we want in return, and so on and so forth. The Israeli government is now, I think, out of desperation, coming together, the opposition and the ruling, in a war cabinet situation, just to face what it is looking at the moment. Netanyahu is not a popular leader. He is in trouble himself. The Israeli and Jewish society themselves have been protesting quite prominently. And has been having, on the street, saying that the kind of political situation with the government of Israel is not acceptable. And it's already on the back foot. And arguably, some people say, because of the infighting with the government of Israel, they might have taken their eye off the ball and forgot or misread, or was the political elite was unwilling to listen to the intelligence signals that were coming through of a long period of preparation of Hamas crossing the border. And so I think when you want to negotiate, you want a credible partner that can make guarantees and hold up the peace process. Who in Israel is going to do that if they are really divided internally?